As Simon said, I'm to set the Philippine context so you can have an understanding of why we are planning to do what we're doing in the Philippines. First of all, the Philippines is made up of 7,500 islands over a surface area of about 300,000 square kilometres. They've got 108 million people and they've got a growth rate of 3% per annum. And they have 12 million people working offshore. Now that means that they've got almost 5 times as many people as us on an area of about 3% of Australia. And that 12 million offshore is about half our population, which incidentally is their biggest export. Many families in the Philippines survive on the income coming back from the overseas workers. They've been independent since 1946. They were taken over by the Spanish in 1536. Spanish occupied the Philippines for 350 years. There was a small period in the 1700s where England was there for 2 years. And then the Americans took over in 1896, and apart from the Japanese occupation during the Second War, they remained there till 1946, when independence was granted. 35% or 40 million Filipinos live under the poverty line of $1 per day per person. And an average family is about 5.6 people, and they require about $50 worth of rice a month. So it doesn't leave a lot for all the other things in life. 40% of the population is also under 15. Civil unrest in the Mindanao area has been going on for 20 or 30 years, and every time the government breaches a peace agreement with the Muslim extremists, there's a break-off group. So it started with the MNLF, Moro National Liberation Front. There was a split-off group, the MILF. 5 years ago, the government came to a peace agreement with them, and now we've got the Abu Sayyaf and other groups linked to Al-Qaeda that are working mainly in this area, which is the autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao, with a population of about 78% Muslim. The rest of Mindanao has some civil unrest, but it has wonderful resources and would really be the absolute, dream of the Philippines if it wasn't for the civil unrest. All the natural resources, mineral, vegetation, all exist there. In terms of governance, you've got the National Congress, which has got the Senate and the House of Representatives, and that's articulated across the country through administrative regions. There are 18 of those, and we work in Region 11. Now, within each region, you have independent cities and provinces. In Region 11, there are 2 independent cities, including Davao City, and there's about 7 provinces. Underneath the cities and the provinces, you have municipalities, and they have mayors, or you have provinces, and they have governors. And then underneath the municipalities, we have barangays. Now, an average barangay is between 2,000 and 3,000 people. Let's say all barangays these days have 1 elementary school and 1 community health centre. And then within a barangay, you would have 8 to 10 situs or little villages. And in some of the remote areas, the barangay might be 6 or 7 kilometres long over very rugged terrain, and therefore if you're living at one end of the barangay and the elementary school's at the other, it makes it very impossible for small kids to walk daily to and from school. The focus areas for our project, this is Davao City downtown, but Davao City area is this whole pink area coming up around here. And that is actually the 2nd largest surface area city in the world. Now, we are working in the downtown area with our Rotary clubs, and with specialist health centres at the Southern Philippines Medical Centre, SPSN. That's the cancer and the crippled children sections of that hospital that you hear more about in a minute. The other areas that we're focusing on are Kaliklik, which is on the province of Samal, Tabonco, that should be an O on the end there, is in this area here, and Marilog, which is a very remote indigenous community, is a good 2-hour drive from Davao City. And that's where we are starting up a new project with the indigenous people in that area. So over to Rob. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you, Darcy. I'm going to talk to you about the day that the club had at the island of Kaliklik, where there were two main events. The first was, as you can see from that banner, a health clinic, outreach health clinic for medical, dental and surgical outreach, which was basically a project of the Club of East Davao, which we're now assisting with. So that, what you can see there is a main stage, and the next shot will show you a bit more, but they're setting up there with some medications and so forth. A lot of that is donated. It might be samples from some pharmaceutical companies and so forth. And it's one of the stations within this basically outdoor outreach centre for medical services to the little village of Kaliklik. Early morning. This is the infrastructure for the medical outreach service, and you can see we're just under a big a roof that's basically at each end you can imagine a basketball ring, and so it's multiple use. It's the community centre that we're using here, so there's a stage there for small performances and so forth. So using existing infrastructure, some open air chairs and tables are set up, and they'll be manned by particular medical expertise, and there's a process of processing the local villagers through this. The next shot is a bit later in the morning, and people have arrived, and there's quite a little bit of information in this shot, and really. They're actually on station 2 over here. Over here they're weighing, but back in behind here there's station 1 where people queue up and they register for the day, and they get some little piece of information that travels with them, so they track people. But most importantly, I thought, back on this little board here is an actual logical diagram of the village of Kaliklik with the streets, and each of those little things, if you've got it in detail, represents a hut or a house where a family lives. And here's the medical record for the village of Kaliklik. It'll tell you who's been immunised, who's growing vegetables, who's living a good lifestyle, and what areas still need some attention done. So there's quite an active health program happening in this village, which I think is reassuring to go there with a sort of once a year medical outreach service, that there is actually infrastructure. Over here you've actually got the sort of the town hall of the Barangay Civic Centre, so there's an administrative centre in here, and up on the board there you can see that's the some of the data about how the barangay is actually managed, financial accounts and so forth, all open. So I thought it was a great little community. The number of people here all queuing, waiting to be weighed, second station. So if you're weighed, you know what size the prescription is when you get right down to the end, if that's what you require. On the day there was about over 400 people who were serviced through this outreach, and apparently listening to the locals who are running this outreach, they started off with I think it's about year 3 perhaps for this outreach medical service. They started with 100, it grew a little bit, and then they heard that the people from Australia were coming and whatever, and so 400 people turned up on the day. As I understand it, there's no local doctor on the island. There is not in that village, right? And there is a bit of a barrier. I mean, the city of 1.6 million in Davao is a 15-minute ferry ride away, but that is an economic barrier in itself. So you wait for services to come to you, right? Here's a little bit of hands-on. This is Darcy's wife Carol, who's a physiotherapist, and this lady obviously has got some pain, so here's one of the stations. So there is an opportunity for people to be involved, and I think Kay and others have helped at other stations. Here's in the there's a little medical centre there which is attached to the admin building that you just saw of. There is only one bed, and this is where small procedures are carried out if someone's got an open wound and so for the minor medical procedures that you would get done in your local surgery. And one of the projects we had is to build onto this to make more space for patients to lie about. Here's the cutting the ribbon ceremony. You can see what is now past President Peter with Oscar, the president of East of Our, opening this extension. And then we got to work and painted the extension. So it was finished in raw concrete and we painted it all. So you can see Kim, that's Peter Neal's wife, working away here. And there's, when you're nearly finished and you've got white out, even an architect needs some guidance on how to finish it. Great team, that. Then we moved on. At the back of that administrative centre is where the elementary school is. So we moved on to the elementary school after a luncheon, and there's the welcome, Adelaide Rotary Club, Prospect and East of Our clubs. And here's current President David with the photocopier and a little sign up here, thank you very much to the Rotary Club of Adelaide. But the importance of going back and visiting the area again as a follow-up, we found out that this brand new photocopier was delivered. They used it ran out of toner, and that 15-minute ferry ride meant that the toner wouldn't be delivered because the toner was part of the warranty service, and it was just not economic for the local vendor to service it. But through the Rotary network, there's a member in East of Our who's a major buyer of, I don't know, with the Toshiba or whatever the product is, and he was going to make sure that the local agent provided the toner. So follow-up is essential even on simple things like photocopiers in the school to provide learning materials. There's a typical picture of a schoolroom, and I must say they were pretty keen. This is a picture of students were put on a little play. This is right at the end where they were asked to, we'd already provided an e-reader to the school, and we were thinking about providing more e-readers, but one of the things about grants and so forth is the community has got to demonstrate that they actually want what you want to give them, and that they can actually put it to good service and that it's sustainable. So these young people put on a play that demonstrated it. That's how they actually did it. It was quite a delightful thing. And then at the end of the period, we've got a table here with pens, pencils and so forth, and we're giving giveaways. So you can see this is Barbara, who's the wife of Trevor Hill, a Rotary Club of Adelaide Prospect member. Here's Frank O'Neill. This is Ildy Middlemiss, a member of the Rotary Club of Prospect. Chris Egan, Kim again, and Kay Dowling, handing out to these kids, and they really love writing material. So that's the day in a quick summary. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob, and those ladies were hot on the kids that came around for a second round or third round or fourth round. I'd like to talk to you briefly about the House of Hope. The House of Hope is a renovated dormitory in the Southern Philippines Medical Centre, and just to give you a quick idea, if you imagine the current Royal Adelaide site on steroids, lots more buildings, lots more people, but almost ramshackle village. These modern, extremely well-built, beautiful laboratories and buildings in amongst a whole lot of palm trees and dirt roads, etc. It's just a mind-boggling experience. It is a gated community, and that's where everybody goes for health. The House of Hope's a transient home for children with undergoing outpatient care for various childhood paediatric cancers, and so to make sure that the medication is delivered effectively and efficiently, parents or a carer comes in with the child and they live in for a period of time. Both the patient and the carer live free, and their cost is really just to share in the upkeep of the place in terms of keeping it clean.
This is the class of 2014, and I'm sorry, but there'd been a rather large shower early that morning, so Darcy and I were a bit wet and we didn't have a chance to change our shirts. Doug Lang, our current District Governor, past President of Prospect, and of course Simon, some of the ladies, and Frank, and the lady on the end, I just wanted to highlight to you, this wonderful person. You meet some special people in the journey of life. This lady is extremely special. May is a paediatric oncologist. She's actually from Davao but studied, and the family lives in Singapore. She commutes. I don't know how she does it. She's a past president of the club. Boy, is she a hard worker. And she's the lady that pulled all this together. This is the class of 2015, and that same rain shower came back again on that morning too, so a few of us, including David, got a bit wet. But the overwhelming thing that you get from visiting the House of Hope is hope. It's not glass half empty nonsense, it's hope. And the smiles and the respect and the wonderful welcome that you get is quite phenomenal. Why are we there? This photograph shows a rather derelict, but still usable, tank to get rainwater collected off the roof, and we won't go into details about the quality and the efficacy of the water, but it has been collected, and that's used potable water for drinking and washing and cooking and so on. And these photographs show the new tank that we did as part of our initial trial project, stainless steel, plumbed in and so on. There's another one there, and it just shows you some of the grounds. A block away, or 100 yards away, is a huge 3-storey laboratory, which is quite something. So it's an area of contrast. And to finish, there's some past presidents, Remy, Carol and myself. There's the way that the water works and gets reticulated back into the system. I wanted just to finish on the idea of hope. If we start on the right-hand side, the total number of cases at the House of Hope almost doubled in 4 years. In that same period, the number of patients alive at the end of that almost tripled. And the survival rate leapt, climbed like a homesick angel from 45 to 77%. So there is hope. May is directly involved in that, but with the support of us and others, it's really a wonderful story to tell, and I encourage you to read more about it.
Thank you, Pete. In the short time we've got left over, we'll just have a quick run through of some of the things that happened, some of the decisions and where the project's going. When we were in Davao, they organised for us to attend a meeting where 2 leaders of local Indigenous tribes presented their case to us and the problems they had. Their problems are very much like minority communities. They've little or no political pull. These particular communities have been driven up into the mountains by the centuries of settlers along the coast, and essentially they're ignored. So that's their problem, that's their plight. And we really thought that if we could put some money towards helping one of these small communities, then there'd be a quantum leap in their health and education, and that's where we took off. So we met with them on that day. Further in our stay, we had a meeting of the 4 clubs, where there were officials present at that meeting from each of the clubs, and we made some decisions there. They're a bit hard to get out of the locals. The locals have a reluctance to come forward and speak in case they say something wrong or can't deliver what they promise. But there were a few good seeds sown before the meeting and a few strong people. And we reached a resolution that we'd look at a major project between the 4 clubs, which would have a total spending of about $100,000 US. The first and primary focus would be to an Indigenous community, not yet identified. The second, to help East Davao continue their work at Kaliklik. Then helping Walling Walling in Tabunko, and then, as we've mentioned, to help the children in the public hospital system. We've certainly commenced the formal part of the application. We are held up at the moment a bit because the locals are caught up with politics, and they're in there trying to define where the funds will be spent and which area will receive our help, and it's apparently a bit difficult to get through the system. So we're held up, we're waiting for that at the moment, but certainly we have everything in place. To give you an idea, this is the goals, the big pictures and the objectives of how we're going to be addressing it, and Darcy has put most of this together over the last couple of months, and really we are ready to fly. So they're the big pictures, and then there are these selected areas where essentially we're going to be putting the help. So it's a great project, and as you've seen, the people desperately need our help. It's running very well, but we still have a long way to go. It isn't necessarily all hard work. I needed to just show that there was a social side. There's a few photos on the screen. Many photos have been deleted to protect the innocent and the not so innocent. I'm told what happens on the Davao dance floor stays on the Davao dance floor, but I'm not particularly sure about that. So this is just a quick view of some of the nights and some of the events, and probably as a matter of interest for you, the gentleman on the right here is our go-to man in Davao, a bit of a power broker and likely to be a district governor very soon. So in closing, there we go, look at that. We think that's a she. In closing, I'd like to thank our speakers for today. I'd like to thank Reg for beavering away on the slideshow, and thank you all very much for listening. We don't have time for questions now, but sure, if you've got questions, please speak to any one of us. Thank you.